Hey, good morning. This is Joe. It's about 8:15 in the morning after I uploaded the Lumenbox Part 1 video. So here is the little box, and I'm going to load some photo paper, the paper that Jorge provided with the camera, and I'm going to try to find a scene outside. It's a clear day, cold but clear outside. Okay, so as I indicated in the earlier video, part 1, the silver gelatin paper is light sensitive, of course, but because we're not going to be chemically developing it, it's okay to expose it to some faint light. The auto development process doesn't really happen unless it gets a lot of bright light for quite a bit of time, which is how we're going to do our exposure. So again, this is the inside of the box. We have these little ledges on either side, and we're going to be putting the paper in so it's kind of curved in the back like that. And this is the pack of paper, and I don't know what kind of paper this is. Jorge indicated that it would be a mix, a variety of different kinds of paper, I believe, is what he said. So I'm just going to grab one of the sheets and close it up. Okay, the shiny side is going to be the emulsion. That's the back side. This is the shiny side. So it looks like it's RC paper because of the curve of the paper. It goes just like that. Close it up. We have either the fast or slow. I'm going to use the slow, so it should be slightly sharper, but it'll have a longer exposure time. Oh yeah, and I should probably put that tab underneath there like that. So there it is, and now I will install my shutter like that and go outside and try to find a place to set it up and take our extended exposure with our Lumenbox. Okay, so I've got to figure out how to mount the little camera, and this is what I've always done with my pinhole cameras. Is I have a block of wood. I have several of these different sizes. A block of wood with a tripod bushing, and the only other tripod I have right now is the one I'm using on my 4x5 Intrepid, so I'm going to use that one. It's a bogan head. Anyway, so I have a couple little cup hooks, little screw-in hooks on either side, and I use either a bungee cord or, in this case, rubber bands because the camera is so small. So it sits there relatively secure, and I can throw it on a tripod. And so it's what is it, 8:30ish here in the morning. So the sun has just come up over the Sandias, and I have to find some sunlit scene outside to photograph this, and I'm going to give it at least a 20-minute exposure. Well, I've got to find a sunlit scene this morning, and the only sun I have is on the back wall of my backyard, and we have this little sun face, little decorative thing. And if you look over the top of the wall, there's the neighbor's tree. So I've kind of set up the camera here on the tripod, so the sun face is kind of going to be in the middle of the composition, and hopefully with a wide angle view of the camera you'll be able to get the part of the edge of the wall and maybe some of the tree. And what's interesting also is one of the things I like about the wintertime light in my yard is I have this back wall that projects the shadows of all the trees in my trellis. It's like a little movie screen of shadow puppets. So the shadows of these branches and the trellis are going to be moving a little bit, actually moving to the east here. And so we'll see what happens on the exposure. So let's go ahead and slide it down and begin our exposure. Well, it's been a half an hour since I started this exposure. So let's close up the shutter, shall we? Like that, and take the camera in and see what kind of results we get. I'm going to just open it up in subdued lighting in my office and see what we have. Well, let's open up the box, shall we, and see what we have here. All right, there's the paper. There is a faint image. There's, let's see here, there it is. So here is the trees up above, here's the top of the wall, and there's the little smiley face. I'm going to go ahead and photograph this with my digital camera and get a positive image processed in on the computer. There's a point I should probably make here about how to convert these faint negative images into digital files. And what I'm doing, well, what I used to do, I have a flatbed scanner, an older Epson flatbed scanner, and when I had an older PC computer, I had an older version of Adobe Photoshop that I would use to post-process the resulting file from the scanner. Well, I have a newer computer, a Mac Mini. I don't have a current version of Photoshop on it. So I'm not going to be using my scanner because the native Photos app in the Mac is sort of insufficient for doing the inversion of the tones and doesn't give me as much control as I'd like. So what I'm going to be doing to get a digital image of this negative is I'm actually going to be using my Panasonic camera, and I'm going to photograph the paper negative as lit from two different sides, kind of like a copy stand setup. And I don't really have a real copy stand, like an attachment for the camera, so I just have the camera set to optical image stabilization, and I just stand above the table, light the subject, and shoot a RAW file. And now I have the RAW editing software, the SilkyPix software, which I have the professional version, the paid version I really like. It gives me a lot of capability, and I can do the inversions and a lot of different adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and import this file and work on it in the computer and see what kind of image I get. So the idea with digitizing these lumen print negatives is to do it as quickly as possible and then archive the negative in a light-proof storage environment. And so I've gone ahead and imported the file into my computer. So let me kind of show you a little bit what I've done with the image. Well, one of the first things I've done is the default tonal curve is a linear curve going from lower left to upper right, and I've dragged the lower point to the upper left and drag the upper right point to the lower right, which inverts the curve, which makes it a positive image. And then I've gone ahead and applied quite a bit of an aggressive S-curve. It's really a reverse S-curve because the tones were originally in the middle, and I've also brought the point at the lower right in quite a bit, and the one in the upper left down quite a bit. And the reason why is because I wanted to get the histogram to be a little more spread out along the spectrum there. And so what I have, let me just show you on the computer here on the screen, the preview mode. So this is black and white photo paper, of course. And this is what it looks like when it's inverted. So it's very interesting. The trees are kind of bluish green, cyan colored. The dark shadows get a little bit of dark bluish gray tones. Of course, the wall is brightly lit. And interestingly enough, the sky in the upper right corner here is very much kind of an orangish yellow tone to it. This is essentially the finished version, the way I see it. I really like the tones. Now, the image, the negative image on the paper was very faint, and I had to exaggerate the tone curve, as I indicated, quite a bit to get a more normal contrast. I've also adjusted some of the contrast settings quite a bit. I did apply a little bit of vignetting. This darkening in the corners is artificial. It's something I've done because I kind of like the appearance of it. It sort of emphasizes the central subject matter in the image. And so I've decided I'm going to leave these two little bands on the left and right side. These are the artifacts from the little ledge on the side of the camera that holds the paper in place. So I'm going to go ahead and develop this into a JPEG. I kind of like the image. I'm really surprised at the colors, especially the sky being, it almost looks like Mars, the sky of the planet Mars that you might see from NASA photographs. But anyways, it's very interesting. It does look like a color image. So there's a couple spots in here. There's one here, and one here, and it's a question as to whether you want to spot those out or not. So I'm going to go ahead and spot out these little spots. So this is the healing tool, and this is the close-up of it, and I'm going to put my little circle over that and click that, and might have to do a couple more times here. Okay, and then I have one more spot to do is down here, and I'm going to click it away. So there you go. And my finished image does not have any spots on it anymore. Well, so far I'm quite pleased with the little Lumenbox camera. It's very good quality construction, considering who built it. The design of the kit was really ingenious, and all you need is a little bit of papercraft skills to put it together. And make sure you read the instructions carefully. So look at part 1 of this series for the whole thing about building the camera and how it works. So I'm kind of happy with my initial image. Now, as I indicated earlier, my paper negative was very, very faint. I think I would probably go for maybe closer to an hour's time. One of the things about this lumen print photography I've noticed is it's difficult to overexpose the image, because parts of the image that receive a lot of light turn the paper darker, and that darkening of the paper automatically masks those parts of the emulsion from getting too dense. So there's kind of a self-limiting factor about the contrast there. The other thing was, Jorge and myself, we've also done experiments with pre-wetting the paper with water, and it seems to accelerate the development process somewhat and change the colors a little bit. But of course, this camera, being paper based, isn't really compatible with a wet paper negative. The other thing is, of course, I was using the aperture plate in there, the insert, and so I might try another exposure with a wide open lens, and it'll be, of course, a softer image along the edges, I'm sure, but that'll be interesting to look at. Now, I did have one more thought about this camera I wanted to briefly share with you, and that is regarding the focus of the camera. So I have not shot it wide open yet, and as I indicated earlier, and as you saw, the design of the camera gives it a curved film plane. The distance from the lens to the edge of the paper is fixed based on the design of the camera, where this little ledge is on either side. So that distance from here to here is fixed. But the distance from the lens to the middle of the paper out where it curves is actually determined in part by how wide the paper strip is, because when you put the paper in there, it curls based on the stiffness of the paper, and it forms a curve. So it's possible that you could fine-tune the focus in the middle of the image, in the middle of the film plane back here. You could fine-tune the focus simply by trimming the length of the paper a little bit. And that might be interesting to experiment with. And this is Joe Van Cleve playing around with a Lumenbox camera. Until next time, you have yourselves a great day.